Inside this big edition of Bills, I got 5 things I want to see from this team in 2025. And guess what? Ain't none of these 5 things all that sexy. Let's stack brick on brick to make things click for the Bills. What do we need to beat Andy Reid as the Bills? Draft season is over, folks. I miss mock draft season. I miss watching college tape and letting my imagination run wild about how Malachi Starks impacts the run defense, or whether Matthew Golden would be irresistible were he to slip to pick 30. But now that the dust has begun to settle on this 2025-26 edition of the Buffalo Bills, I've got 5 things. 5 kind of boring things that I think are the most crucial components within the greater machinery that could make 2025-26 a successful year for our Bills. Top of this list is a healthy Matt Milano. Second is another year of super efficient Josh Allen. Then I think our coordinators, Joe Brady and Bobby Babich, need to exhibit growth and development. Fourth, I'm going to submit into evidence that Dalton Kincaid is the very premier pass catcher for whom so many of my wide receiver crazy Twitter friends are pounding the table. And the final gear in the engine is not a shiny new rookie, but a somewhat grizzled old vet in Joey Bosa. So, let's talk about Matt Milano. I did an advanced Twitter search for Matt Milano mentions throughout the 2022 season, the 2022 season after which Milano was named a first-team All-Pro. The results that returned were far more mixed than I was anticipating. Some mentions lauded Milano for being the superior backer between him and Tremaine Edmonds, while other mentions derided Milano for his 15.5% PFF missed tackle rate on run snaps, a rate that ranked him 14th worst among all linebackers. As we know darn well as football fans in the capital A, capital E analytics era, every advanced metric requires context, and every advanced metric can be manipulated to fit a narrative. A Matt Milano critic might say that he misses a lot of tackles, while a Matt Milano defender might say that his far-ranging aggression puts him around the ball with such frequency that PFF has many more missed tackles to record by way of pure technicality than most linebackers in the league, because most linebackers in the league wouldn't even have been in the frame on a play where Milano is able to stick his nose into the mix. So, the numbers I'm going to cherry pick to prove my point about Matt Milano are the number 2.4, the number 7, and the number 38.1. 2.4 is the average depth of tackle on run plays that Milano recorded in 2022. Good for 4th best among all linebackers. Did PFF report that he missed a whole bunch of tackles? Sure. But PFF also reported that when Milano did make a tackle in the run game, it was made only 2.4 yards from the line of scrimmage, 4th best among linebackers. The number 7 represents the number of interceptions, 3, plus the number of dropped interceptions, 4, that Matt Milano recorded in 2022 per PFF premium stats. No linebacker had more interceptions than Milano's 3, and no linebacker had more than half Milano's 4 dropped interceptions. And our final number is 38.1, which was Matt Milano's win percentage on blitzes in his All-Pro 2022 season. Better than any other linebacker in football by 6 whole percentage points. 2.4 average depth of tackle on run plays offers the profile of a linebacker who makes splash plays in the run game. 7 combined interceptions and dropped interceptions paints the picture of a linebacker who makes splash plays in coverage. And 38.1% win percentage on blitzes offers a linebacker who makes splash plays as a blitzer. If you want to argue with me about all of the context surrounding those numbers, if you want to tell me that those numbers can only happen when Matt Milano is paired with Tremaine Edmonds, who I will always defend as an excellent linebacker even when many pundits I trust criticize him. If you want to tell me that Leslie Frazier's scheme contributed to Milano's success as a run defender, pass defender, and blitzer, I'm all ears, as the third segment in today's show is all about our young coordinators. So I'm happy to go back in time and chat about our old defensive coordinator in Leslie Frazier. If you want to argue that the offense having a true number one in Stephon Diggs contributed to the defense being able to pin its ears back or some other such tangential, barely related circumstance were the main reasons that Matt Milano had an all-pro year in 2022, feel free to @ me on Twitter. My handle is @TheBillsPod. Hell of a handle, no? Engagement feeds my ego and someday might even put food on my daughter's plate. So argue away. Now, this is the first and longest segment of this edition of Bills, because it is my belief, and you can quote me on this. I keep my cash in gold and my receipts on Twitter. My handle is @TheBillsPod. Hell of a handle, isn't it? That Matt Milano's potential return to full form, what I call Mint Milano, is the single most significant storyline of the Buffalo Bills 2025-26 season. If we finally experience Milano and Bernard together in earnest for the first time, we may well witness among the league's best linebacker duos and see a championship caliber Bills defense. That's the Matt Milano segment. That's thing 1 on my list of 5 things I think about the Bills' upcoming 2025-26 season. Thing 2 is Josh Allen's efficiency. So, let's talk about Josh Allen and efficiency. In 2023, the year after Josh was on the cover of Madden, 18 of his 23 turnover-worthy plays turned into interceptions. That same year, only 12 of Baker Mayfield's 26 turnover-worthy plays turned into interceptions. Josh's turnover-worthy play percentage has always been on the higher end. There's no way around it. Vacillating between a rookie year high of 5.1% and, hey, what do you know, a career low in the aforementioned 2023 of 3%. That is, until this past season, 2024. In 2024, Josh's MVP year, only 2.6% of his pass attempts were put in harm's way. A mere 1/10 of a percentage point higher than Patrick, I've had the best offensive coordinator in the history of football every year of my career, Mahomes. Josh figured it out. Josh figured it out, Bills Mafia. To those who think that Josh's efficiency is likely to revert to the norm, you know who you are. I hate to break it to you, Alex, but there's a really, really, really good chance you're wrong. He's a really good quarterback. And he's a smart devil, too. His life is settled. His wife is settled. He's got his MVP and his Madden cover in his rearview mirror. And there just isn't much reason left for him to sling a ball around MetLife Stadium on a Monday night, September 11th game like he did that one Monday night on September 11th in 2023. I've got a warm take for you. Not quite a hot take, but a warm take. Josh Allen will never throw double-digit interceptions in a season ever again. And that's even with an 18-game schedule nearing on the horizon. If I'm right, and Josh keeps it clean and efficient this year like he did last year, the offense will once again average over 30 points a game. And if this warm take prediction coincides with my first prediction about Matt Milano coming to fruition, the Bills will have a very, very good 2025-26 season. That's thing 2. As for thing 3, that has to do with our coordinators. So, let's talk about the coordinators. Joe Brady, the offensive coordinator, and Bobby Babich, the defensive coordinator. Joe Brady called plays for the 2020-21 Carolina Panthers, an offense led by Teddy Bridgewater and DJ Moore. And that offense was about as so-so as you'd expect. 21st in total yards, 20th in passing yards, 24th in scoring. I'd imagine that I, like most reasonable and reasonably seasoned football fans, don't get terribly enthusiastic about those metrics from the only other Joe Brady coordinated offense to ever grace an NFL field. But in the context of a team trotting out a career backup as its starter, that's Teddy Bridgewater, and when you combine those pretty crappy metrics with the exceedingly efficient 2024-25 Buffalo Bills offense Joe Brady coordinated last year, I'm comfortable enough projecting a Bills offense that can at least replicate last year's performance. That isn't to say, though, that the Joe Brady coordinated Bills offense wasn't without its deficiencies. If there is any hope to achieve Sean McDermott's dream of perfect complementary football,
You have to play a complementary game. Complementary.
then Joe Brady really ought to figure out how to scheme up an offense that comes out of the gate swinging with greater frequency. Or so I thought, before I did some Google searching and uncovered a strange reality about the 2024 Bills offense, which is that, compared to the other 31 teams in the NFL, the Bills had a pretty darn good first half offense. Buffalo's 5.4 points per first quarter ranked 7th, while Buffalo's 9.1 points per second quarter ranked 3rd. I submit that the perception of the Bills being slow starters on offense is the product of the perfect game. January 15th, 2022, a 47-17 AFC wildcard win over the Patriots. Brian Daboll's final win as the Bills' offensive coordinator, because the next game was 13 seconds. I, for one, have never come down from that cloud. Indeed, I've never come down from those 2 clouds. The perfect game into 13 seconds set offensive expectations so high that Bills Mafia has a permanent, unattainably high bar set for its expectations of its Josh Allen-led offense. I am one of those members of Bills Mafia who is continually baffled by any drive that doesn't end in a touchdown. But now that I'm a self-licensed football therapist, I'm working through a process of reconciliation wherein I integrate expectations from the climax of the Daboll era with expectations born of a more holistic reality, one which catalogs the Bills' offense in an index alongside all the other teams in the league, not just our own off-the-charts amazing Stephon Diggs, Cole Beasley, Brian Daboll, Josh Allen 2022 season. And in so doing, I'll close out my early May hopes for Joe Brady and the offense by entering into evidence that I think it would be lovely and conducive to being back in the mix as Super Bowl contenders in 2025 if the offense simply replicated its 2024 efficiency. As for Babich, last year was his first time calling plays for any team. And since the defensive personnel turnover between the 2023 Bills and 2024 edition wasn't all that dramatic, I have my concerns about Babich's ability as a play caller and as, well, a coordinator, as the dude who oversees the entire defense.
But, Nick from New York, how can you say the defense didn't experience personnel turnover when we witnessed the offseason departures of Trey White, Micah Hyde, and Jordan Poyer?
Easy. Hyde and Poyer both displayed the obvious signs of losing that unwinnable game against the unbeatable tic-tac-toe chicken that is Father Time, and Trey White blew out his Achilles in Week 4. Some players were new to the Bills come the start of Babich's tenure as defensive coordinator at the beginning of the 2024 season, sure. Players like Taylor Rapp and second-round draft pick Cole Bishop. Like the usual platoon free agent signings at One Tech. This past year represented by Jordan Phillips, Austin Johnson, and Quentin Jefferson, and some others who didn't make the 53. Like Dwayne Smoot and Casey Toohill. But the core of the defense, Ed Oliver, Greg Rousseau, Terrell Bernard, Christian Benford, even Von Miller, none were new faces as the Babich era commenced. And yet, the defense regressed. In 2023, opponents completed 65.8% of passes for an average of 6.7 yards per attempt. In 2024, under Babich, those opponent passing numbers increased to 68.5% and 7.1 yards per attempt. In 2023, the Bills' opponents converted 38% of the time on third down. That number grew to 43% in 2024. The Bills were actually a tenth of a yard better on average against the run in 2024 versus 2023. And we all know that there's always a universe of context which surrounds any statistics like those which I just mentioned. But yes, but how about the eye test? We know we saw a defense that struggled in just about every facet of the game except causing turnovers. And we can't attribute the turnover creation to Babich because the Bills have been among the top 2 or 3 teams in turnover creation for 5 seasons running. The Bills cause turnovers because McDermott preaches turnovers and Bean gets some players who can cause turnovers. So as for a confidence level in Babich, I'd say that I feel about the same way one feels the first time they get into a sea kayak. I am eye level with an endless and swelling sea full of monsters and grinning eels. And while I have confidence in Taiwanese plastic craftsmanship, a million generations of human evolution nonetheless compel my flight instinct to raise the hair on the back of my neck. I think Bobby Babich gives a hell of a presser. I like his vocabulary. I think he is poised in front of a camera. And I also think that he's heading into his second season as a defensive coordinator. And so something like 26 fewer years on the job than Steve Spagnuolo, 24 years fewer than Jim Schwartz, 19 years fewer than Vic Fangio, and so on and so on. And so, on the confidence meter, I think we're all in a sea kayak. And if that puppy floats, phew, okay, we've got a shot. If that sucker's got a hole in it, though, we might need a new mode of transportation by week 12. But, if that puppy's roto-molded polyethylene, thermoformed polyethylene carbokelvar core is the latest and greatest to have fashioned atop a million generations of seafaring human ingenuity, then we could have a really good defense this season in Buffalo. I think Babich needs to dial some shit up, though. I loved the odd mirror we started running with Milano up at the line of an odd front towards the end of the season. More exotic stuff like that, with a guy like Michael Hoyt now in the mix, at least as of week 7, would be very nice to see. I don't think this season's defensive success will have very much to do with our young players, the rookies, the second-year guys. Though I remain a steadfast and card-carrying Javon Solomon stan. But rather, I think the success, or lack thereof, of the 2025 edition of the Bills defense will be determined by the health of our veterans like Joey Bosa and Matt Milano, while being equally determined by Bobby Babich's growth as a defensive coordinator, which one hopes will prove to have been a rapid form of growth, because Babich's rookie year as DC wasn't great. But don't let that negative review of Babich's rookie year get you down, my dear fellow Bills fan friend. I'm a self-licensed football therapist. I love the Buffalo Bills. I want to help you love your Buffalo Bills as much as you can love your Buffalo Bills. So, to help you be soothed, to help you be calmed and enlivened, here is one hell of a lovely little musical interlude. Thing 4 is about Dalton Kincaid and Cole Bishop. I'm lumping them together, but I really shouldn't, because they are at very different stages in their development. We know what we have in Dalton Kincaid, okay? Many, not me, in Bills Mafia seem to have a hard time admitting, understanding, reconciling what the Bills have in soon-to-be third-year tight end, former 25th overall draft selection Dalton Kincaid. Dalton Kincaid caught 73 balls as a rookie in 2023, setting a franchise record for receptions by a tight end. Not by a rookie tight end, but by any tight end. The expectations for Kincaid entering last season were sky high. If you were to average out the projections set by Joe Marino, by Matt Perino, and Ryan Talbot, the Cover 1 guys, and most anybody who comments on the Bills, you'd see something along the lines of 120 targets, 90 receptions, 900 yards. In fact, Marino is on record via his September 2nd edition of Locked On Bills as projecting Kincaid to garner 115 targets, pull in 90 catches for 395 yards. That's my dyslexia that I have undiagnosed. For 935 yards and 8 touchdowns. I'll say that again. Marino projected Kincaid to garner 115 targets, 90 catches, 935 yards, and 8 touchdowns. One hell of a high bar for a second-year player, no? But this was no regular second-year player. This was a first-round trade-up investment in a pass catcher, a special pass catcher, and a first-round trade-up special pass catcher who caught more passes as a rookie than any other Buffalo Bills tight end dating back to October 28th. My birthday, by the way, 1964, when the team was founded. Kincaid's 2024, of course, wound up not fulfilling such lofty projections, as he was targeted 75 times, pulling in 44 catches for 448 yards and just 2 touchdowns. Of course, Kincaid also missed 3 games after injuring his PCL thanks to diving for an errant pass in the first quarter of the Bills' Week 10 win over the Colts. Now, quoting from Joe Marino's Herd Mentality article, to which I highly recommend you subscribe if you want to know more about your Buffalo Bills than I can ever tell you, activate Dan Carlin voice, quote, among the 41 NFL tight ends to run at least 200 routes in 2024, Kincaid logged the 8th highest route win rate in the league, with a win rate of 10.7%. This was down from the 14.8% mark he tallied in 2023, which was number 4 in the NFL among tight ends. All data in this post comes courtesy of the outstanding Fantasy Points Data Suite, end quote. Kincaid won routes at a higher rate, George Kittle, at a higher rate than Evan Ingram, at a higher rate than Brock Bowers and TJ Hawkinson in 2024. Again, quoting from Joe Marino's Herd Mentality Substack, to which you really ought to subscribe if you want to know more about your Buffalo Bills than I could ever tell you, quote, among the 41 NFL tight ends to run at least 200 routes in 2024, only 69% of Kincaid's targets were catchable, which was the lowest in the league. When targeted 10 or more yards down the field, Kincaid's catchable target rate was an embarrassing 37%. As fate would have it, Kincaid's injury in Week 10 against the Colts came while trying to track down an inaccurate throw from Allen despite being wide open down the field. End quote. Josh is our MVP. He is Buffalo's second son. He is my daughter's favorite player. Hell, he's my favorite player ever. Sorry, Thurman Thomas. We'll always have my original AOL Scream name of TT34. But Josh is not infallible. Kincaid's role changed a bit this year in the full Brady offense, a new role which saw him run deeper routes than he did as a rookie. Kincaid's average depth of target as a rookie was 6.5, while his 2024 average depth of target, as I mentioned, was 8.3.
This is the way.
This is the way.
This is the way.
This is the way because Kincaid was dominant as an intermediate and deep threat in college. During his 2 years at Utah, his average depth of target was 8.6.
This is the way.
During the senior, quite deep for a tight end. And a whopping 11.2 yards the year prior. And how dominant was he? Well, Kincaid had more receptions during his final year at Utah than Brock Bowers or Sam Laporta. Kincaid's 75% receiving percentage was 7th in the nation. 4 spots behind Bowers, but 14 spots higher than Laporta. And he had 8 receiving touchdowns, the second most of any tight end in college football, and 890 receiving yards, also the second most of any tight end in college football. And to provide some further context for how out of sync Josh and Kincaid were last year, that 69% catchable ball rate Josh provided to Dalton was 11 percentage points lower than the 80% catchable ball rate Josh provided to Dawson Knox, despite Dawson actually running routes that were, on average, 1.9 yards deeper than Kincaid. Knox's average depth of target was 10.2 yards, while Kincaid's was 8.3. And if Josh could have found Kincaid with catchable balls as frequently as Sam Darnold found TJ Hawkinson, who, by the way, also ran deeper average routes than Kincaid, Kincaid would have, mathematically anyhow, hauled in an extra 7 passes, theoretically, of course. But you get the point. Josh Allen has to hit Dalton Kincaid when he's open with far greater frequency than he did in 2024. And Josh Allen and Dalton Kincaid indeed need to get on the same page. And if they do, then I'm not so concerned about Dalton Kincaid. We drafted him to be a stud tight end. He'll be a stud tight end. Did I talk about Cole Bishop? No. Well, I'm not really going to. When you're a second-round pick, like Cole Bishop was, you should probably contribute meaningful snaps by your sophomore season, which he's entering. I have confidence that Cole Bishop will indeed contribute meaningfully as a strong safety, but that confidence is mostly predicated upon the belief that, I don't know, Brandon Beane wouldn't draft a safety with the 60th overall pick if he weren't worth it. And that Sean McDermott, the safety whisperer, I don't know, wouldn't be able to develop a safety worthy of a 60th overall pick.
Gloss?
Beyond that,
I don't know. Geez, I don't know. New umbrella?
that's thing 4. And now, to close out today's edition of Bills, thing 5, Joey Bosa. So, let's talk about Joey Bosa. And I'm not going to try and predict Bosa's season. I haven't dived into my fantasy points data suite to see if I can't undertake some statistical archaeology to develop a narrative about what numerically, metrically, we might hope to expect, or at least hopefully anticipate, from Joey Bosa this season. And I've not only neglected to undertake any statistical analysis of Joey Bosa because my 2-year-old daughter bonked my wife's nose last night and thus sent the house into an oblivion that prevented me from completing the script the way I'd previously contemplated, but because the Bosa evaluation is pretty darn straightforward. He's spent the past 3 seasons pretty banged up. He played in just 5 games in 2022, 8 games in 2023, and 14 games last season. So he seems to be trending in a positive direction vis-a-vis his availability, but he'll turn 30 this July, and so while I hesitate to apply Von Miller-generated PTSD to the Bosa signing, we as Buffalo Bills fans understand pretty well that Father Time plus the injury bug tends to equal a drop in production. And as I mentioned production, I think that the most productive way to consider Joey Bosa's upside as a Buffalo Bill is to incorporate some expectations of 2 other much, much younger members of Bosa's defensive end room. And those much, much younger members are Landon Jackson and Javon Solomon. Javon Solomon was my 2024 draft crush. There's a tweet that you can find. My handle is @TheBillsPod. Pretty darn good handle, no? In which I predict that Javon Solomon is destined for the Hall of Fame. I'm not going to use my microphone today to tell you all the reasons why, but I will mention Solomon's 14.6 PRP score, which is a PFF formula that combines sacks, hits, and hurries relative to how many times they rush the passer. Solomon's 14.6 PRP ranked him 13th in the NFL last season, which to me indicates that he has a pretty darn good ability to get after the passer on true passing downs. And we'll need him to get after the passer on passing downs because the Bills probably ought to limit Bosa's total snap counts. Who else could help limit Bosa's snap counts? Well, that would be our brand spanking new rookie, 3rd-round selection Landon Jackson out of Arkansas. I'm not going to make this edition of Bills any sort of predictor of what I might expect from our rookie class, but I think it's reasonable to predict that Landon Jackson will see somewhere in the range of 30% of snaps as the defensive end opposite Greg Rousseau. And it's pretty reasonable as an assumption to expect most of those snaps to come on early downs, since Jackson is a long-ranging athletic end who established himself as a premier run-stopping defensive end in the SEC. I could also see our Deone Walker selection, the fourth rounder from this year's draft, getting reps in the Deone Smoot role, where he's lining up as the defensive end in the 4-eye and reducing down to the interior. As big as Deone is, 6'7", 340 pounds, he was used all over Kentucky's defensive front, with 135 of his 524 snaps last season coming split out over a tackle. Walker has not, I repeat, has not been drafted as a big-bodied, two-gapping run plugger on the interior. He is an athlete who, despite his size, is most valuable as a player who can use his athleticism in congruence with his freakish size, more so than being a big body that can't get moved off its spot by a double team. And so all of this adds up to a rotation at defensive end, which will come as no surprise to any Bills fan who has recognized McDermott's proclivity for rotating his defensive linemen, that ought to put Joey Bosa in position to be fresh-legged, to be healthy, and on the field in high-leverage situations, like, say, late in the fourth quarter against the Chiefs in the AFC Championship game, when we need to get the ball back to Josh. And that's where I want Joey Bosa. I may think Javon Solomon is destined for Canton. I may really like what I saw out of Landon Jackson's and Deone Walker's college tape. But rookie seasons ain't made for rookies. Know what I mean? So, as excited as I am to see what the kids can do, a critical linchpin in the Bills' ultimate chances to improve upon last year's very, very, very good season is Joey Bosa being in the optimal position to make the big play in the backfield when we really, really, really need a big play in the backfield. So, to recap, if I see Bosa and Milano healthy and productive, I think I'll see a defense that makes the big splash play at the very moment when we most need a big splash play. If I see a Joe Brady coordinated offense that doesn't turn the ball over, that keeps Josh clean, that scores more points in the first half than we in Bills Mafia even realize, I think I'll meet my quota of Josh Allen and a baseball cap sightings for 2025. If I see Bobby Babich scheme up a defense that gets us off the damn field on third down, I think I'll see a championship caliber defense. If I see an Allen to Kincaid connection that more closely resembles an Allen to Knox connection, I think I'll see many of my Twitter friends who deride our pass catchers as subpar eat a little bit of crow. And if you see me on the street wearing a Bills hat, because I'm always wearing a Bills hat, raise a fist in the air and say, "Go Bills." And I will return the gesture by raising a fist in the air and saying to you, "Go Bills, go Bills, go Bills, Bills."